Hey, this is Cancer Unscripted, a place where young people talk all things cancer. The good, the bad, the unknown. Supported by Canteen Australia.
Is today's episode Life Before and After Cancer, hosted by young leaders Matt, Harry and Jack.
Welcome back, everyone. This is Harry. We are going to be talking about our before and after cancer experience. So you also have Jack here as well.
My name is Jack. It's good to be here today.
And my name's Matt, and likewise.
And today we're going to talk and just have a little casual conversation about our lives during our cancer experience and before and after. So, Jack, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, so before my cancer journey, I was just a boy growing up in rural Queensland. Just got back from a trip from England, believe it or not, and asked my mum to drop off some presents to my best mate who lived a couple hours away. And on the drive home, she crashed the car. Pretty shocking because it was just a normal Thursday afternoon. Just finished my art class, getting ready for the show that was going on. And then, got the call that mum had been in a car crash. She was perfectly fine, even though the car didn't look like that was possible. And then, that's how we found out she had cancer. So she had a level 3 glioma brain tumour. And that was the day my world changed.
Yeah, I'm kind of along the same line as Jack, was living a very carefree life, I suppose. Never really encountered a life-changing experience or struggle, I should say. I just started year 11 at a new school when Dad was diagnosed with stage 3 non-Hodgkin's lymphoma back in 2012. Seems very, very long ago. And then, Dad obviously had his treatment. And as I said earlier, coming from such a, I guess, just like your average Joe kind of family. Going through that new experience of Dad being sick, I guess the pillar of our family. You kind of grow up your parents, they're going to be with us forever. Nothing's going to happen to them, blah, blah, blah. You know, that cliche kind of thing growing up. That's just the image you hold of them, and that's what I had. So it was very shocking and an unusual experience when it happened. Dad later passed away in 2013. What I thought, obviously, I dealt with the cancer experience, the diagnosis, and then obviously Dad's passing. I guess there's no timeline on grief, but once I got to that point where I felt I had dealt with the whole experience, my stepdad was diagnosed with, now I'm not going to be able to pronounce this, esophageal cancer of the throat. That went miss or undiagnosed for maybe 2 months. And from diagnosis to passing, it was 2 months. So 4 months in total, we had to experience it all again. Obviously a little different, there was no blood tie to my stepdad, but he obviously came into our family when times were tough, so we looked at him as family. And then just over a year ago, Mum was diagnosed with breast cancer. So once I felt was pretty shocking. Twice I knew kind of how to deal with it, but then a third time really hit home. Obviously a different stage of my life, a different experience, but all very similar. Just under half a year ago, Mum was given the all clear. I had a 12 months all clear, and at this stage things are looking good, fingers crossed. A very topsy-turvy kind of cancer experience, but that's the long and the short of it, I guess.
Thank you, Matt. I guess to bounce off you, my cancer experience was quite difficult as well, and came out of a lot of shock and a lot of just random events more than anything. For me, mine started out, I think, back in 2011, thereabouts. My mum basically came home and sat us all down, and we were sitting in the backyard, and she said, look, Dad and I have something to tell you. And of course, out dropped the C word. As much as you don't want to hear it or know what it means, at that point, I was, I think, early year 7 at the time. Very, very, very young to be dealing with this sort of jazz. very, very young to understand what it would later mean to both me and to a lot of other people. I think the most difficult part of that was just kind of having that moment where you sat there with the information that, oh, my mum has cancer. Like, it's something that you just kind of chew through and you don't really feel like it's real for minutes that stretch out, and it feels like days almost, just for a single minute. And then the weird thing is by the end of this conversation, my memories just switch into each part of it. And you go from that portion of time being told, oh, mum has cancer. Okay. Next memory for me is just sitting in the backyard, shaving my mum's head. It's one of those things that you kind of look back and you go, this is nuts. This was just a nuts experience. And I think for me, it was quite difficult that even though it was a short, like in comparative terms, 6 months was a very short dealing with cancers, but the repercussions for it have been lifelong. And for a lot of things in my life, it's actually created problems with me even remembering a lot of those times and a lot of that portion of my life. I still struggle remembering a lot of high school, remembering a lot of what I did, how I was, who I was, all that sort of thing. And it's an incredibly interesting thing to look back and kind of try and examine and piece together all the different parts of how you felt and what you feel during those moments, because they're excruciating, but they just seem to almost disappear so quickly. And it leaves you kind of feeling like you've just had the rug pulled out from under you twice. You just stood up, just figured out what's going on, and then just as you get that feeling, out it goes again. So, yeah.
So I'm going to ask a question now. When did Canteen come into your lives? Because I know for me, I only had about a week after mum was diagnosed to being straight into hospital, being 3 hours away, still trying to go to school. And then Canteen was great, being rural in Queensland. Canteen came to my hotel and drove to me. My sister wasn't of age at the time, but I was. So I was able to sign up right then and there. But how did Canteen reach out to you, Matt?
From memory, we were actually in Charlie Gardner. So obviously Dad had all these biopsies and tests leading up, but I think it was his first round of treatment. And my sister and we'd been to the cafeteria and then come back to the room, and Mum had some pamphlets of Canteen that someone had dropped off. Mum and Dad had a read through these, and obviously they thought they liked what they saw in the pamphlet and thought it would benefit the two of us. Not only because they were unsure of how to deal with things, but if they took the burden of the two of us, like them having to look after, our thoughts and feelings as well as navigate theirs, it might, spread the load a bit. So when we came back, nurse came in and kind of explained everything to us. And I think it was maybe that afternoon we'd agreed to get Canteen to come and go through everything with us. Obviously it's very different how they do it nowadays, but back then, they organised, one of the staff met us in the cafeteria at Charlie's and went through all these photos with us of past camps and programs, went through more pamphlets, and bearing in mind at this stage, my older sister is very, very enthusiastic, very keen, likes what she sees. She's 2 years older than me, so she would have just left high school, and she was kind of at that stage where, that's what I need, and that's what I'm gonna need. Whereas I was 2 years younger, even before cancer came in, I was very independent, and obviously listening to all this stuff about Canteen, I was I think I shut off. I feel like I shut off. More the fact of, I don't need this help, I'm okay, there's nothing wrong with me, blah, blah, blah. All that kind of, I'm too cool for this. I saw all these young people playing around in these photos and I was like, nah, that's not me. I thought I was the cool group at school kind of thing, you know what I mean? I was like, Canteen's not for me at the end of the day. But the staff member persisted, and Obviously didn't have to sell it to my sister, she was already invested in it. But yeah, from there, she told us to have a think about it. I kept swerving her. She kept trying to like go through the, induction. I don't know. We're calling it an induction process?
Yeah.
You kind of feel like you have to dodge the.
Yeah.
You're just sitting there going, what do you mean? There's nothing wrong with me. I'm fine.
But in the back of my mind, I was knowing like what this lady's doing is like going to help. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And yeah, I think it was 3, maybe 4, maybe 5 weeks. I dodged her. Eventually, Mum was like, "No, we need this." Dad was like, "You need this," and my sister was like, "This is what I'm doing. Like, this is cool." I was like, "Yeah, right." So an hour and a half, maybe 2-hour meeting at Dome, and I guess after that I became a Canteen member. But yeah, that's how I was kind of fighting with what I thought I needed and what I know I needed.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. Because it's really difficult to engage with those sorts of things. You're looking at it as this is a thing for people with cancer or people dealing with cancer, and you almost separate yourself from that because you look at it and you go like, I don't need these guys. I don't want these guys. I don't want cancer to be anywhere near my family. Like, get lost.
Yeah.
And it's such a weird experience because, like, for me, I had 2 of the guys that were part of leadership inside the actual membership. They ended up coming out to see me. Like, why am I talking with these guys? What's the point? I'm not the one getting my head shaved. Why do I need the help here? And in walks a bloke called Sean Don. Now, ACT's Young Australian of the Year. Or this is a guy that's he's got so much energy for me. He's got so much time for me.
Was a member of the board.
And a member of the board, yeah. The man has worked tirelessly to make sure that people feel comfortable with their experiences. And it feels almost hilarious looking back on it because putting it in plain terms, they came into my house, they spoke to me, put on a promotional DVD. We sat there, watched that, spoke to us again, off they went. And I still sit there and go, in pragmatic terms, that's a very weird thing to have changed your life. But at the end of it, you're also sitting there going, those blokes changed my life. If it wasn't for that moment, if it wasn't for the fact that I went, yeah, you know, bugger it, I'll do what I can. And I end up in Rottnest, sitting on the bay, and I'm eating, without doubt, probably the best part of my life at that point. I've just had an absolute ball. I've loosened up, played all the cheesy get-to-know-you games and all that sort of stuff with people that I haven't even met before. I'm completely alone, but I'm loving it. Like, it's the first time I've actually sat there and gone, ooh, geez Louise, even like, we didn't even really talk about cancer, I don't think, for the entire day. And at the end of it, I'm sitting there going, ooh, felt like I dropped a brick out of my pocket. I was laughing, I was happy.
I feel like I was the same. Like, you're not the one getting the treatment. You're not the one that needs the help. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And, well, you're not the victim here.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the weirdest thing, is feeling like, oh, I'm getting the support, but I'm not the guy who's been shot in this instant. I'm the guy standing next to him. And it's like, what's going on? Why am I here? Why am I doing these things?
So I don't even remember much about my interview. All I remember was these 2 guys, Roshni and Nate, I think his name was, rocked up in my hotel, overlooking the river. I was watching, cartoons for our family at the hospital. All of a sudden, knock at the door. I'm like, oh yeah, g'day. It was a bit weird because, you don't talk to strangers. But then, yeah, like, all I remember was, do you have any questions for us? And I'm like, stunned. And I talk a lot. I know I do. And I can shut up when I need to. But I was stunned. Like, I don't remember anything else. And then they offered to buy me lunch. So I got a $50 voucher. And, they didn't have a Uber Eats back then when I was a kid. But went down to town and,
You bought $50 as a long range in the middle of Queensland.
No, I'll tell you what though, for a 16-year-old kid.
Oh yeah. Oh,
mate,
$50 lunch, not bad.
that was Macca's for the next week.
Literally.
It's one of those weird things that you sit there and go, in 4 or 5 weeks, all 3 of us have experienced something that's just completely changed our lives.
And I think like the big thing is our intake interview, the cancer diagnosis. They were all very different, but it couldn't be closer to the same if we tried. You know what I mean? We kind of experienced the first part of the cancer experience. We were within 2, 3, maybe 4 years of the same age. Like, we were at school, young boys, you know, and that's the main thing. Wouldn't have met each other in another world, but in this world, we've come from here, there, and wherever. And it's the same with all the young people that come through Canteen. In another dimension, we might have crossed paths, but non-talking paths or like non-interactive paths.
Yeah, sitting on a cafe line and chatting with the guy in front sort of thing.
Yeah, so it is very bittersweet, I guess. Like, it's from a crappy situation, we've come together to help each other. And I know myself, I didn't initially want that help. How are these young people meant to help me? You know what I mean? Like, we're the same age, but until you experience the foundation of what Canteen offers, you're always going to be in denial.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Like, I wouldn't be half the public speaker or half as confident as I am now, because I look at what Canteen did to me. I would have gone, absolutely, there is not a single way in hell you will stick me in front of a crowd and get me chatting with people. And all through high school, it's the same thing. Give me a public speaking assignment, get stuffed. It's going to be 2 minutes long if it's meant to be 5. If it's meant to be 2 minutes, it's going to be 30. Like, you're going to get nothing major. But by the end of this, I've come out with more skills that I can possibly name. People and contacts across Australia. I've had the most insane sort of things. Oh yeah, 16-year-old you has gone into a radio station and spoken to 3 radio jocks. Like, 17-year-old you has shaken hands with multiple CEOs of different companies that you wouldn't have even thought would be wanting to speak to you, let alone shake your hand. And you've had a moment where you could speak with all these people and be authentic in front of these people, and they haven't booed you. They haven't waved you off stage like some pariah. They've sat there and clapped you. And that's insane. Like, it doesn't seem real.
Exactly the same. Like, I speak to people now outside of Canteen, you know, family, work. When I explain to them, this wasn't me, you know, 12 years ago. Same as you, Harry. Like, I couldn't be that speaker. I couldn't be that chair of the meeting. No way. Like, I was the guy that, you know, participated in sports, just did as I was doing. Like, there was never a lot of opportunities, but there was never a point where I put myself forward. And it's cliche, but it's not cliche to us to say that Canteen has got me to here. People outside of Canteen would hear it a lot from young people with inside Canteen and from staff, and they would think it's cliche because everyone says it. But until you've experienced it, and like, touch wood, I don't wish a cancer experience on anyone, but until you've experienced the power of that peer support and until you experience what Canteen offers, like, you're always going to think those people are trained to say that. I remember my first camp after, you know, dodging Canteen for so long. I remember my first camp, everyone's socialising, and I was sitting there by my suitcase waiting for everyone to arrive and the welcome or whatever. 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 years on, I'm that socialiser, getting that young person up. Like, until people see that that was me, they're, you know, it's just that you've got to experience it kind of organisation.
You got to buy in.
Yeah.
It's like just about every self-help guy says, if you're going to do something, you've got to buy into it. And you've got to bite down, whether or not it's like hell or high water, you got to bite down. And it's just like you said, just that moment when you're sitting there, like you get those points where you're the first guy there, you're sitting on your suitcase, you don't know what's going on, you don't know these people. It's terrifying.
It's the same with you, Jack. Yeah. Like, when you first joined, you know what I mean? And now you look at yourself now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I do. I was pretty confident and pretty outgoing before Canteen. But golly, mate, when I say I can talk the end of a horse, I screwed up that line. What is it? What is it?
We're going to go with it.
Talk the rear end off a horse? Something like that.
Yeah, you can talk the river end off a horse, or you can argue with the strainer post.
Sell ice to an Eskimo.
Sell ice to an Eskimo.
I can do that now. I can guarantee. But yeah, it's just what Canteen's giving you. I remember we did a promotional thing and it sounded like we were a cult because everyone said the word family. Like Canteen is a family.
Canteen family.
People understand you on levels you don't understand yourself. And until you understand other people, you just don't get it. You just don't get it. And that's okay. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. In a sense, it matures you so quick, but in the best goddamn way.
Yeah. And there's the two real ways of dealing with grief. You either take the low road or you take the high road. And if there's anything that Canteen offers, well, it's the high road. They always offer you a way up, a way out, a way forward, always with 1 foot forward, always with 6 other people backing you up no matter what. And that's, I think, what Canteen really offers in a nutshell, what really gives it that grit, that drive, and that real gumption to push you forward, is that no matter what, they can get you to where you need to be and where you will feel a lot better about yourself, about your experience, and about dealing with such a strong kick in the shins more than anything, and being able to process that in a clear way, in a kind way, and in a careful, nurturing way, and without losing any part of yourself. And you just gain so many new aspects to yourself you don't even realize were there in the first place.
Well said.
I want to enhance what's been said in here. And when we started this podcast, we put ourselves back in our younger shoes, like when we first joined, explaining our life prior to cancer, and then that first diagnosis, joining Canteen, that whole process at the start. And then as we gradually grew up, and now coming towards, I know I'm coming towards the end of my cancer experience, but the two of you are not necessarily aging out, but like you're in the last 3 or 4 chapters of your book. Yeah. So you've come all this way. I want you guys to put into words, thoughts, feelings, descriptive word of, that segment. It's not your whole life, because there was that whole life before Canteen, but that period leading up to the cancer diagnosis, your experience in Canteen, and where you are now and going on to, put that into a little summary, I guess.
I think for me, the biggest part about that whole experience was taking a chisel to stone and realizing that a lot of what I was doing was slow work. And it's slow work dealing with grief. It's slow work learning to deal with yourself, your thoughts, your feelings, and all that sort of stuff. Especially, I think, coming as a male into that experience as well, it was an extremely difficult time to deal with that, knowing that my dad, for example, couldn't talk about it. So I think a huge part of what has happened to me has been taking a chisel to stone and just sculpting away pieces and pieces and chipping and looking back, refining it, seeing the detail, going back at it, chisel. So yeah, that's how I define it, just chisel through stone.
Yeah, I think for me, I was a perfectionist, so realizing I couldn't control it was the biggest thing. And like, I'm pretty stress-free now, I'll tell you that. I stress over the important things, for sure. Do you go to Macca's or HA's for breakfast? Realizing that I can only do my best, and that sometimes it's okay to fail, or to be tired, to cry, to be stressed. Like it's just okay.
It's like the immortal words of Dwight Schrute. I don't know, Ryan. Sometimes you just fail.
Or what was it? 2020's quote: "It is what it is."
No, 100%. I was the reverse. Like, I was carefree, and then kind of took on that stress. The first bit of stress you take on before you realise there's certain bits of stress that you don't need to take on. Like you said, Jack, you'll always have stresses, but only stressing about the stuff you can control. I guess that's kind of sums up where I came from, living at home, like I was still at school, that whole carefree, stress-free, and then taking on this whole experience that I'd never even imagined could happen. I'd never even thought about it happening, to now being in a spot where people ask me, where would you be or what would you be doing if it wasn't for Cancer or Canteen? And I couldn't tell you that, because 12 years of my life has been Cancer and Canteen. When I joined, I just turned 16. I'd had this 16 years of my life, but that's barely a stepping stone. That's barely a drop in the ocean. So when people ask me, where would you be or what would you be doing or would you change anything? Obviously, I'd bring my dad and stepdad back. That's inevitable. And mum wouldn't be having breast cancer. But as you guys both said, we wouldn't have had these other experiences. If it wasn't for cancer, what else would it be? So it's and I know the two of you would have these questions. It's not looking at what could have been or being sad or disappointed about what has happened. It's what's happening now, kind of thing. I guess the long and the short of it, as I said in my introduction, it's hard to, sum up 12 years of something into a short podcast. 3 Cancer Canteen experiences into a little podcast. I feel that's pretty good.
Not too bad, I got to admit. And I think having the space to be able to discuss these things is just another testament.
And the opportunity.
Yeah. Opportunity as well. And just to be able to sit there and talk and discuss this and have the tools and the pieces to be able to sit there. At some point, this might not help the person listening to this right now. It might not have any bearing on them whatsoever. But if we just help one person, we just hit that one person that's listening to us right now, that's what we're looking for. We're just looking to help one more person.
Canteen gave us the stage and the microphone and the costume.
Yep.
We sang. We did the performance.
We'll go out with a bang, that's for sure.
Amen. All right. I think for all of us here, that signs us off on a good note. So on behalf of myself, Harry, Matt, and Jack, I think this is our story of before and after. We thank you all for listening and for taking the time to listen to 3 Aussie blokes talk about their own experiences and yarn over and over for God knows how bloody long. But we're happy that you came and joined us today. And we wish you all the best. And if you need help, please reach out. We're happy to help anytime.
Thanks for tuning into this episode. If you or someone you know are looking for support, visit canteen.org.au. Stay tuned to our channel for our next unscripted chat.